So I suppose my last question here is really about whether there were any particular challenges or obstacles you had in collecting and analysing the data, or any nice surprises. Anything you want to add in that sort of way?
Yeah, I think yeah, there's various challenges, I think. One is that you had to be enormously flexible. So research is typically, you're following protocols and you're following sort of fairly rigid sets of rules, and everything has to be done in a particular way and all that kind of thing. Care homes are places where it seems that anything could happen at any moment. Very unpredictable. You have to be ready for anything. So, you'd be doing something and an alarm would go off because a resident had tried a door somewhere to get out, and then, set the alarm off. Or a resident had fallen or something and people had to rush off. If you're working with a carer, maybe they'd had to go and help. Or you'd find that the resident you wanted to work with was up in the hair salon, or just as you were about to give a lesson, the tea trolley would arrive, and obviously it was important that the resident would have their tea and biscuits or whatever. So it had to be very, very flexible. Those are just little examples, but this is just the way it was all the time. So often I'd be thinking I'd be doing a lesson with such and such a body at such and such a time for half an hour, and I'd end up doing a lesson with somebody different in a different place for 10 minutes, because that's what could be managed at the time. So that in itself is complicated, is a complicating factor. And the other thing I found really challenging, it was just me on my own, so I wouldn't recommend that necessarily as a way of working. Um, but you know what it's like as an Alexander technique teacher. You're supposed to be kind of exuding this Zen-like calm, and you're supposed to not be drawn in to the person you're working with and their stories and all this. You're supposed to keep back into yourself, as it were. So you've got all that going on, and often the kind of things they're telling you about are kind of, they're quite shocking or surprising or whatever. Um, but not only that, you've also there with your researcher hat on, and there's another bit of you that's thinking, "Oh gosh, that's interesting. I must remember to write that down afterwards because that's an important bit of data." So you've got all this going on in your head, and that's really quite challenging trying to teach and in a
Hmm.
complicated, ever-changing situation, and also have that researcherly kind of thinking going on as well. So yeah, that for me was the real challenge. And I think for me personally, like as a human, um, one of the big problems was the fact that um, you're only working with 4 people, and as you're there in the home every day, you're seeing so many other people, and you think, gosh, that person, if only I had another few, a bit more time, I could do a bit of work with them really usefully, or and there was so much need, um, and you felt that there wasn't really enough of you to go around, and it would have been nice to be able to do more. I guess that was a little bit of a tension as well, but that's a more personal thing, really. Nice surprises. I think, as always for any Alexander teacher, the real joy is seeing a resident that you'd never seen smile, smiling and laughing, seeing people in less pain, seeing the residents get more out of life, a rather limited life in some ways, but actually enjoying what there was to enjoy more. Seeing the staff, walking beautifully, being more relaxed, um, unfazed by what was going on. So, for example, I remember one day I turned out in the afternoon, and I said to one of the carers, "Oh, how are you today? You ready for your lesson?" She said, "Yeah, yeah." She said, "But the cook couldn't come in, so I ended up having to do lunch." So, as well as all her other responsibilities, she ended up having to do lunch for all the residents, and she
Hmm.
was completely unfazed by it. And I don't think she wouldn't have been phased before, do you know what I mean? But she kind of taken it all in her stride. Yeah, it's fine. It was only frozen and tinned food, but hey, she managed to do everything else she needed to do and get lunch for the residents. So I thought that was absolutely fantastic. So that and those kind of things are just lovely to see, aren't they? So for me, I guess they were the real joys and the satisfactions of doing the study.
It's a real glimpse into real world research and the kind of challenges and obstacles when you are working in a kind of normal everyday context, and how you work with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, really interesting. Thank you.